Let me ask you a question. What if you were forced to give up your home? Not by criminals or by your government, but by the manipulation of the real estate market. We're told home ownership is a human right and a part of the American dream, but it's a dream that's quickly being shattered by the greed of massive corporations who hold ever more power over the price of real estate and who are driving up rent for ordinary people. Investors like Donald Trump claim to be real estate moguls, but he's a small fish compared to those who really influence the property market. Companies that are using their massive wealth and power to become the largest owners of real estate on the planet. Right now, we are living through a severe housing crisis, and it seems that there might be a lot of forces at play to ensure that things stay this way. To understand what is going on, we need to look at how a few companies may be manipulating the housing market, both globally and in the US. And let us start with Zillow, one of the biggest players in American real estate. Zillow is the largest real estate marketplace in the US, and the site has more information on properties in the US than anyone else. Its database contains more than 135 million entries, basically 96% of all real estate in the country. If you're buying or selling a home, chances are you go there first. This gives the company access to an insane amount of data. They know which zip codes are getting the most attention through searches and what property types are trending. And best of all, they know what people are willing to pay for houses in every area of the nation. With this much amount of data, Zillow has an incredible amount of power, and with such power, it is able to beat almost any normal buyer to getting the property that it desires. Zillow doesn't just list other people's properties for sale, it also buys and sells them as well, flipping homes for profit. And because they have so much data, they know which properties are the best to buy that they can then sell for the most profit later. But Zillow also has access to a lot of money, both via its own cash reserves as well as through billions in low interest loans from investment banks like Goldman Sachs. This means it's able to overbid on the homes it really wants, or to make desirable cash-only offers to acquire certain homes. And as cash sales are more likely to be accepted by a seller, Zillow often wins out over individual buyers, even if they're offering the same price as someone else. It's not difficult to imagine that sites like Zillow could be using their power for self-serving reasons, and hypothetically could be using the data and resources and power in order to manipulate the housing market. And here's where things potentially get very dirty, because lots of people believe that this is exactly what sites like Zillow are actually doing. In a recent viral video, a Las Vegas real estate agent showed how Zillow could use its power to manipulate the nation's entire housing market. Hypothetically, Zillow could find an in-demand zip code where a one-bedroom apartment sells on average for $300,000. First, they buy 10 homes in that area with cash. This creates a spike in sales, while also blocking off desirable homes to real buyers, which could also increase demand in that zip code. Zillow could then buy an 11th similar home in the same area, but this time they intentionally overbid and pay $350,000. This allows them to increase the Zestimate for houses in that area, Zillow's own price calculator used by millions to value homes in a specific zip code. A higher Zestimate could also increase the value of the initial 10 homes Zillow bought at a lower price point, meaning Zillow could immediately flip those homes for a huge profit. Using this method, they could stand to make hundreds of millions per year, hypothetically by artificially manipulating the value of real estate in as many areas of the country as they like. Long story short, Zillow has the marketplace, the data, the cash in order to effectively control the entire real estate market. But this is all just hypothetical, right? There is no way that Zillow would actually be using its power in order to conduct this kind of manipulation, right? In a 2021 report, the publication Input told a story of a Florida resident who sold his house to Zillow. Prior to the sale, the Zestimate in his area dropped significantly to a lower price than it had been before. So thinking house prices in his area were on the decline, he took an offer from Zillow, who gave him slightly more than the Zestimate, making him think he was getting a good deal. Once sold, however, the Zestimate almost immediately increased, raising the price of his house by 14%. And within days, Zillow had sold the home to a new buyer, netting them a healthy profit, causing many to accuse the site of manipulating prices to screw real buyers and sellers. Other real estate platforms like Redfin and Opendoor have also been accused of these same manipulation practices, but all three companies have since denied any wrongdoing. So, is Zillow abusing its power in the housing market? I will let you be the judge of that. Let me know down in the comments below, and I'd also love to hear similar stories of things happening in your own country's real estate market. But here's the thing, it is not just Zillow that appears appears to want to control everything in the real estate market because there are other culprits that are being accused of doing the same thing as well. Wall Street investors as a whole are already the biggest landlords in the United States, and no single investment firm owns more real estate than Blackstone. Through its investments, Blackstone owns more homes than anyone else in the US and is the single largest landlord in several European nations, including Spain. Blackstone is betting that more people in the future will become renters and are investing over $6 billion on new property acquisitions this year alone. It's as if they know the real estate market will continue to benefit landlords and that buying housing will become more unaffordable for many, which may have something to do with the fact that while they're buying up thousands of pieces of property, they're also using their influence to try and rid the market of affordable housing by opposing government plans to provide cheaper accommodation to the masses. Basically, investment firms like Blackstone exist for one particular reason: to make as much money as possible. So it's not really a stretch of the imagination to think that they might be intentionally contributing to the housing crisis in order to gain more control over the market. Now, in a moment, I'm going to talk about how this could inevitably lead to a few companies owning the vast majority of homes, eventually pushing most of us, or all of us, into becoming renters. But first of all, I just want to quickly mention today's sponsor, Masterworks. Apart from real estate prices, the other place where many are feeling the financial heat is inflation. In the US, it's at 9.1%, a 40-year high. In the Eurozone, it's over 8.5%, the highest it's ever been. So it is important to invest in a way that can help manage inflation, and I believe an asset class that can help achieve this is fine art. During the last inflationary period, fine art appreciated by an average of 23% annually, and at a certain point in history where inflation has been above 3%, contemporary fine art has outperformed the S&P 500 by over 6 times. Obviously, most of us don't have a few $1 million lying around so we can buy our own Banksy, but with Masterworks, you don't have to. Masterworks buys high-end art pieces, securitizes them, and allows its members to invest in the paintings, meaning almost anyone can get into this active market at an achievable price. Since joining Masterworks, I've already personally invested in a Banksy and a Picasso, the 2 pieces on your screen right now. It is super easy to sign up. Masterworks usually has a waiting list in order to join. However, by clicking the link in the description, you can get started on your art investing journey today with just a few clicks. Okay, now back to the video. And it seems that it's quite obvious that there could be some shady manipulation happening in the housing market. So is anyone sounding the alarms? In a recent article, the New York Times highlighted the extreme housing unaffordability in its home city, where renting a 1-bedroom apartment now averages $3,500 per month. Their suggested solution to the crisis? They say we should just live with strangers to save costs. In other words, it seems as if one of the most respected news outlets on earth has just figured out the concept of housemates in 2022. What they haven't spoken about, however, is the alleged market price manipulation by companies like Zillow. Now, this could just be a coincidence, but it's interesting to note that the New York Times takes advertising money from investment banks like Goldman Sachs, and Goldman Sachs makes significant profit lending money to companies like Zillow, as well as being heavily invested in profiting off the real estate market themselves. The New York Times is also partially owned by investment firms like BlackRock and Vanguard, who are also both heavily invested in the real estate market. Now, nobody can say for sure that there is a connection between the news outlets and those companies that might be potentially manipulating the housing market, but it is always interesting to draw some sort of a possible connection. But one thing that is for sure is that people are really looking for actual solutions to the housing crisis. Unfortunately, many of the solutions being offered aren't concentrating on making real estate more affordable, and instead they are focusing on making people renters forever. WeWork, for example, has launched WeLive, a co-living concept designed to help people share living resources, where just like Netflix, you'd pay a monthly subscription to rent somewhere to live. Each renter gets their own bedroom, but most of the other living amenities are communal: kitchens, bathrooms, and even living spaces. But despite not getting everything to yourself, prices aren't actually much lower than normal rent, with one of WeLive's New York studios costing around $2,800 per month, and the company is conducting regular testing to see what people are willing to pay. Subscription-based co-living spaces are becoming much more popular around the world, especially in expensive cities like London, Singapore, and New York. Sites like Co-Living describe this as a better way to live, while companies like Nuovo are betting on subscription-based rental services becoming much more popular. And home unaffordability isn't just a Western problem either. For example, in Japan, where home ownership is at its lowest level in almost 30 years, leading to a spike in subscription-based co-living services that seem to be profiting off the fact that fewer people can afford to own their own home, or even the rising cost of rent. Now look, I don't really know what's going on, but it does seem that big business is helping to contribute to the housing market crisis, and then they are selling us a solution that might keep us dependent on them for a long time into the future and possibly forever, by essentially installing themselves as the landlords of the earth. So, is there anything that we can actually do about this? If you're not a fan of your right to own a home fading into oblivion, maybe it's time to stop. Stop investing with banks that seem like they're hell-bent on centralizing as much control of the real estate market as possible. Stop purchasing homes from institutional investors that are likely significantly driving up the cost of real estate for everyone. And stop using sites like Zillow if you fear they're possibly using their power to manipulate the market. Sure, these companies have way more power than any of us individually do, but their power comes from us, by our money flowing to them. And we all have the power to stop that flow by voting with our wallets. So while it does seem that the housing market situation is quite desperate, and it might seem like institutional investors have a crazy amount of power over the real estate market, just remember one thing: without us, they are powerless. Thank you so much for watching. We have a newsletter that people rave about, 65,000 people getting extra educational nuggets on finances through beautifully written stories, link down below. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing and sharing the information so it gets out further, and I will see you in the next one.